Great. Welcome everyone to the MyData versus COVID-19 call. This is the third call from the series that we started 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, our original call was interrupted, and we are now restarting with the a bit shorter and speeded up version. I would like to. My name is Karolina, and I welcome you all to this call. I would like to give the microphone to the Teemu Roponen, General Manager of MyData Global, to tell us a bit why we are having this initiative, this call, and how MyData fits into the context of fighting COVID-19. Teemu?
Thanks, Karo. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Sorry for the inconvenience. Live and learn. So my name is Teemu. I lead the staff of 5 working at MyData Global, but we are not just the staff of 5. We are much more powerful, and if you will, Karo, we are a global organization, an international nonprofit headquartered here in Finland, but working across the globe. Right now, from over 50 countries are members, active in local hubs around the world, 25 of them at the moment, and some of the great hub actives here on this call. Year and a half old as an organization, but some of you will know the history goes back to about 7 or 8 years ago. Some of us from the open data movement kind of applying the similar principles for personal data. And yes, on you go. The vision, fair, sustainable, prosperous digital society, and the key element of that for us, the human-centric approach to personal data, meaning that us people, we get value from our data, we have a right possibilities, the tools to set the agenda on how that data is used. And for organizations, the ethical use of personal data is the most attractive option. And 3 fundamental shifts for that, from formal to actionable rights, talking about data empowerment, not just data protection, and going from closed to open ecosystems, the fundamentals outlined in the MyData Declaration, which I hope you can read and sign, mydata.org/declaration. And yes, the COVID, and I'll definitely not go through this graph, what you see here, or this diagram you see here. It's our theory of change, what we do in practice to reach this rather high reaching goal. It's a sequence of events, and what's important is that we connect communities, we have thought leadership, publish groundbreaking thoughts to lead, spearhead us towards this movement. We help facilitate the ecosystem of change makers, and of course, reach out, communicate about the fine work we do. And actually, regardless of the COVID crisis, what we want to do actually relates extremely well, even in these changing circumstances. We think it actually will accelerate change in many ways, in which we will get to in this call. I'll not get into that in more detail. Just pointing out there that the change towards a human-centric approach to personal data, as needed as ever, great opportunities to be had even in this time of crisis to make that a reality. Mm-hmm. And for you, Karo, go ahead.
Thank you, Teemu. Yes, so as you could see, well, MyData has is working for fair, sustainable, prosperous digital society. And of course, when we talk about COVID, more and more discussion is now focused on the personal database solution, on the contact tracing solutions, applications, and of course, we see our role in this discussion, and also our role in presenting the decision makers and the authorities with the better, more ethical solutions. And this is what this call is also about. just for reference, we also collect the different apps that deal with the COVID. You can see it on our Trello. And then coming back to the call, our first presenter, unfortunately, he had to drop out. He was Antti-Yogi Poikola. He wanted to update us or share his reflections and inspiration from the 1 week of the discussion on the contact tracing in Finland. How actually from the Corona Data channel in MyData Slack, the discussion moved to the Greens Party in Finland, and then how actually this translated over the week to the interest of the journalists and also the minister, the government. I will share later with you also on our social media. You can see the recording of Antti, and hopefully he will be able to join us next week to tell us more about this, like how to actually also influence the decision makers with something good, with ethical solutions. But he's not with us, and I have to now jump. I have also his slides here in the presentation that I'm sharing with you. But I will now jump over to our next speaker, Paul-Olivier Dehaye, who is joining us from his from Geneva to tell us about how to keep MyData going, how to elevate MyData in a discussion with the decision makers. So Paul-Olivier, do you want to share your screen? Welcome.
Just maybe quick suggestion to delete actually the tweet, with the old link to the old session Zoom, just to be sure that no one joins in the meanwhile and finds I don't know what.
Sure.
Yeah, all this has been done.
Yeah, the old meeting shouldn't be available anymore.
Did someone change the password to the meeting?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Are we able?
Start?
Yeah. Can we go on with Paul-Olivier?
Yeah. So I will.
yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll briefly say that I actively encourage anyone who is in the MyData community to look at Yogi's video that he just produced, summarizing a week for him. A week of intense lobbying all around Finland, trying to point out all kinds of digital issues related to COVID. So that is partly my point in this talk, this very short talk, where I want to talk about the way MyData can be most effective in engaging others outside of the MyData community, also engaging with global, so with the umbrella organization, with different communities, in order to create the change we want, or to contribute to creating the change we want. So a little bit of background, because I'm mindful that not everyone here necessarily knows MyData, but MyData I would summarize it as a diverse community understanding complex issues around personal data. So this is very important. There are many different issues around personal data, ranging from security all the way to ethics. Could be data protection in between, could be business models, could be many, many different things. And there are people who understand this diversity of complexity, but there is also people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of geographies, all kinds of experiences in the community. And that has always contributed to a richness in making sense of personal data issues. Now, the way I see the COVID crisis is first, of course, like everyone else, as a health crisis. But we have to acknowledge that the response to this health crisis so far has been in, of course, treating as many people as we can who are acutely sick, but quite a few who are sick are not getting the treatment they probably would deserve to get. And the main response has actually been a social response, a response of isolating ourselves in many countries. Some of us have been in confinement for a while. Some of us are probably going to be very soon. So the social response suddenly to a health crisis, that's kind of unusual. And the next step is probably going to be a digital response. So if I go over, I think on Monday, Finland announced they would be doing some some contact tracing of citizens on a voluntary basis. On Tuesday, it was Germany's turn, and I guess tomorrow it's France's turn, with today an announcement from the Commission on this, the European Commission on these matters. And so this is, we can start to see a digital response shaping up. And I think that means that COVID changes everything for MyData. It changes it in two ways. It changes it in terms of our own domain of action, of reflection, of operation in general. Suddenly is being not invaded, but being approached by many newcomers who are going to do crowdsourcing. We're going to start to reach out to a vast array of a large swath of the population to try to get deep and intrusive data about them. And then most importantly, are going to start sharing between them a huge amount of this information. And this is often new for those actors. If we don't act now, we are actually losing a lot of credibility we've built up over time in this space. And then it also changes the means of actions. I mean, it's kind of the converse. It also means that we can leverage this experience to reach out to those players who start caring about personal data more, about crowdsourcing, about getting data from people, about sharing data between themselves. We can offer solutions to do that bit as well. So today, I mean, overnight, essentially, there was a board meeting, and the board decided to focus at least the short-term efforts of MyData on handling those aspects of the COVID response. But there are some conditions that are non-negotiable towards the community, towards the staff, towards the outside as well. We have to keep true to our values, of course. We have to remain aligned with the MyData declaration. We have to be still aligned with our long-term strategy. Doesn't mean that everything, because of a crisis, MyData fundamentally changes what it is about. And this action that we're doing needs to be financially sustainable, at least mostly financially sustainable, because that's part of keeping the movement going. So I would like to first reflect with a few observations on what happened on this channel, Corona Data, where within a week, I think, or maybe a bit more, a bit more, yes, 200 people converged from many different places to start helping. So first, there was an internal mindset change. People internalized progressively that this transition from health crisis to a social response to a digital response. And we know that it took a while for people to understand why they should be confined, why the social response was necessary. It's going to take a while for them to understand why a digital response is necessary as well. Some of what is discussed now would have been unfathomable a month ago, and is still unfathomable for a huge proportion of the population. Now, when people within MyData and outside started realizing that, they started acting as they could, which means mostly alone. So they looked at the science, they wrote policy briefs, like Yogi started doing. They built apps. They started to reach out to other apps in the network and other organizations. And Yogi's example is good. I mean, he realized that's a way I can influence the situation. I write a policy brief, but I can't do it alone. So let me extend my networks, and let's focus on that. Now we have started to realize, as the Corona Data group, that there is something to be done. There is still an evolving set of interlocked actors. We still have to negotiate who is in that group and who is outside, and how we work together. We can see that there is a lot of proto-projects that are emerging, lots of projects that people want to work on that maybe are just built internally with people within the group and not necessarily fetching the right partners to make that project even stronger. The hub network is starting to activate with, for instance, South Korea and Taiwan and Japan sharing their own experience. And we knew where this group would gather. That was a Slack channel. It's now maybe a Zoom call on a weekly basis and so on. But now the next step is to decide how we act together. So how do we get the board support we need? That's done now, in order to reach out to more powerful partners. That's part of the idea of periscoping those meetings. So we can reach out to others outside, and we can build more complex coalitions with better partners. I think there is one motor at the moment, is that we're already making a difference. As Yogi's example shows, and I know of many others, we're starting to influence choices that are made politically, that are made technologically, on what solutions will be pushed. We have to be aware that everyone is experiencing fast changes. All the organizations, all the individuals, all the governments, the authorities, everyone is. but not everyone is able to frame it as a change within a theory of change. Some funders care about that ability because it gives them clarity of where some efforts are going. And we're a strong community. We're a strong community that has spent quite a bit of time building a MyData strategy. We have to realize that COVID could fast forward the change we want by 18 months or push us back by a long time, because the solutions that are chosen are actually disempowering to individuals. The long-term strategy doesn't change, but we need to connect to what we're doing. We need to connect that strategy to our next steps slightly differently. So we need to still make steps that are aligned with this global strategy, but are maybe different, slightly different. But we are strong. We are a strong community. We have spent time building a declaration aligned strongly on different values. We've taken time to spell that out. We have a clear theory of change. We know how to adapt a theory of change to the circumstances. We can get this understanding that enables us to mobilize a community of 2,000 people, 100 organizations, to expand this community. We have decided to act in a specific way by building swim lanes. This is quite important, actually. This is something we've realized over time on this specific topic. It is complex. We need to have these streams of actions. We need to have thought leadership that gives us direction on where we're going. We need to connect different communities, and we need to facilitate ecosystem to actually build something. And all of those things are important. And if the projects that emerge are not coherent with this understanding we've gained of how to build complex projects, then they're probably not going to fly very well. There's always going to be a tension between letting the community shine, which everyone, of course, wants, and to coordinate this action into sustainability. So this is just the summary. It's a very boring summary, but the projects need to integrate with our long-term objectives and be financially sustainable. And the MyData community can make them happen. I think there is, that's the end of my talk, actually, what I wanted to say. But there was a newcomer on the channel, someone who I think is a newcomer, that put a comment in the Slack channel on MyData, asking what MyData could do for them. So if they wish, this is also an opportunity to ask a question, or anyone else, actually.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Paul-Olivier, for sharing this. And yes, of course, we have all the schedule a bit upside down today because of the disturbance and delay. I see Adrian has the hand up. Adrian, do you want to? So basically, what I wanted to say, we can take a couple of comments or questions, and give also then move to Kristina's and Signe's presentation, and continue also on the chat and in the Slack channel. Adrian, do you want to ask your question? Or
yeah, it's more of a comment. I don't pay as much attention to the various European governments and the important role that MyData is playing in steering this COVID response, digital response thing. My comment is that until now, in many of our strategies, we've focused on interoperability and who federates with who. And it might be much more efficient to focus on transparency for these government efforts. In other words, if as a strategy we shift to making sure that citizens are aware of the surveillance rather than trying to control it as much, this might be an interim way to sort of preserve our principles while dealing with this loss of privacy that is almost certain going to be rested up on us by these governments.
thank you. Any comment, Paul-Olivier, on this?
I would say the jury is still out on the need to lose privacy, at least in Europe, on the need to lose privacy in order to address the crisis. I mean, it might be that some governments need to take more forceful action, but there are still quite a few governments that are trying to navigate consent, and of course consent can be abused, but some some voluntary basis for individuals to share data, which is, of course, extremely well aligned with MyData principles. So we'll see. It might work, it might not. What I've seen also many countries do is take aggregate data from corporate players, like a phone company, to try to give better prediction at how people are complying with the measures, at how much they're traveling, and things like that. So it's many governments are still trying to figure it out, and also they're learning from each other. They're learning from each other's experiences. I mean, the governments right now in Europe are looking at what Asia is doing, or Asian governments have done, and they basically all say we want to do the same, but aligned with our values. And this is also where we can help. But your point is well taken, that focusing on transparency is better than interoperability.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And maybe, Paul-Olivier, you can still tell us, like, for people who would like to get engaged in this whole movement, what they should do, what's the best way to connect?
So, aligned with what I just said, everyone comes to this with some impression of what they can do to help. So the effort is, how can you align this impression with the group you have around? So I would say join the Corona Data channel on or Slack, and from there see what projects exist and how you can tune them to make them better, basically, with your contribution.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul-Olivier, for this and your work and inspiring us all in MyData community to take the action on COVID. For those who will watch the Yogi's video about the whole story, like how the story unfolds, it actually starts from the first Slack message from Paul-Olivier in Corona Data channel and Corona Data channel. So yeah, please join us if you're interested in taking action on that as well. And now I would like to move from Europe to actually travel all the way to Japan and connect with Kristina Yasuda, who is our, MyData Global Board member, and also MyData activist. And on top of that, she's also now working on actually contact tracing app called COVID-19 Radar in Japan. And maybe Kristina, you can tell us about different challenges to overcome when it comes to privacy, transparency, and also how the cooperation looks like, and what is your experience of the person working both on MyData and on the contact tracing app?
Sure, yeah, thank you so much, Carolina. And hi, everyone, super happy to be here. So I think approach we took in Japan to ensure transparency is to open source the code from the very process of building it. The open source code we're seeing now globally, though Singapore has not made it open yet. PPP, the European ones, are promising to make it open, still not there. You know, people build it and make it open, but here we're actually building it open source. So we have community members, we have different folks coming in and contributing their expertise, asking for and contributing how much personal data they want to be in, basically, as well. So yeah, here's a repository if you're looking for C# Xamarin Serverless API side, and we also have a Discord channel if everyone's interested. Yeah, so I think people know by now quite well what contact tracing is. So I'll quickly go through how it works, why it works. Our team is led by an NPO called Code for Japan, in a civic tech organization, and they've done an incredibly good job interviewing different stakeholders, including healthcare organizations. So yeah, they're quite strict about confidential information, so I should be careful what to say, what to not. But yeah, I'll just quickly run through why people are saying it should work, and then going through non-technical details, the considerations that basically cannot be open source. And I think we heard that, each governments are trying to adapt it to their own values, and we could help. And just I would throw in a couple of questions regarding that. So how it works in our case, it's a Bluetooth based, as in other countries. We're using Graph API it's a basic database that can store relations. So one data point was how many different data points it interacted for how long and when. So this turned out to be perfect for the contact tracing we were trying to do. So it's Azure based, and yeah, and a point to highlight, so right now we're not even collecting mobile phone number, which is quite different from other apps. And what we're doing is we're basically just using generating device ID and communicating to the people using push notifications, so not SMS or anything like that. Yeah, so this link was actually posted in MyData Slack as well. So Science, well-known scientific journal, posted that quantifying SARS transmission suggests epidemic controls digital contact tracing. So you can never say in science it works 100%, but at least the approach seems to be endorsed. And we've been interviewing, so Japanese government, I'm sure every government does, but our government has as well a team of, I think, 20-ish medical professionals, like well-recognized researchers and doctors who are advising, and they advised our government to implement this application as well. So our Japanese government clearly stated out these are three focuses they'll be doing during COVID-19 response. So first one is rapid identification and treatment of clusters. And this is said to be the reason why Japanese response worked quite well in the beginning. Well, I would say it still is working. The increase rate is much slower than other countries. And second aspect was rapid treatment of patients and guaranteeing enough medical resources. So right now there are different efforts trying to build different dashboards, visualizing demand and supply of medical equipment and stuff. And the third one is encouraging behavior change for the citizen. So I think so the way we presented it, that is contact tracing app could help the first one and third one of this focus. So in terms of identification of clusters, so right now the way clusters are identified is literally an interview. A person comes in, he is COVID-19 positive, and you're asking a person, well, what have you done during the past 2 weeks? Which is quite hard to remember, as you can imagine. But if you can have a data that can lead to identification and also the behavior change, yeah, asking people to stay home. Right, so I just did a quick research on how many global contact tracing app, what's happening around the world. So Singapore is claiming they're the first. Looks like Korea was actually there even earlier. And Korea is collecting a lot of information on, yeah, even I think address, and they're even sending out the history of, if you're near a COVID-19 positive person, they're sending out the person's age, name, and the history of movement, I think. Israel has another application. India released a couple of days ago, and obviously Europe is considering. Australia has been reaching out everywhere. And Singapore said they had around 40 countries reaching out to them once they released Trace Together. So definitely an approach that every single country is looking at, with obviously, and yeah, the biggest concern everywhere is privacy. So a couple of points that you cannot, you have to consider quite carefully is messaging it out. So just because the effectiveness of the application depends on number of people who actually installed it. So one of our thinking was, you install an application not just to then, but to save your loved ones, to protect your loved ones, and that seemed to be received quite positively. So even the pop-up messages, just being mindful that, you know, no one's interacting with positive people knowingly, intentionally, or, you know. And then App Store posting, this is actually information I received from another MyData member, that, you know, this is only recognized institutions can post. So if you're building an app, just be mindful of that. And knowing the flow of medical institution. So different countries have different flows, obviously. In Japan, there are one cases where people go directly to the hospitals, but we also have medical institutions who are responsible of aggregating all the data. So the numbers we have in Japan, like how many people got infected every day, do not come from the hospitals. They come from these another type of medical institutions, just hard to translate. But so you have to adapt the, so app ideally would be used both in hospitals and those medical institutions. So understanding the flow, how are they sending information between themselves? Yeah. And then maintenance of open source code, the consideration we were facing is, so yeah, right now it's open source. It's good. People know what's happening. People can contribute. People can, you know, give their opinions. But once the government wants to use it, who's going to maintain it? Just ensuring there's a fair process of choosing a vendor there. And yeah, again, how many people need to download an app?
Kristina, don't want to rush you with some more minutes.
One last slide.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carolina. Last slide, yeah. So yeah, 3 big points: handling of personal information. So right now we don't collect, you know, personal information, no phone, anything, just, you know, randomly generated device ID. But obviously there is pressure, and legally there is a legislation that allows the collection of data in urgent situations like this. No, literally there's a clause that says, you know, when there's an epidemic, that the data can be collected, like according to your principle. And again, this is not really talked about, but authentication. So once you are COVID-19 positive, you come to the hospital, you have to have a verification authentication there that you are actually COVID-19 positive. So you don't have people just randomly pushing, oh, I'm positive, even though they're not, and running around the city. And that has been really, really hard to design, honestly. And also definition of contact. So yeah, I'm sure it may be outlined in Yogi's video, but it's not just government lobbying. It's lobbying all the professionals, asking them to say this works. It's talking to medical people, talking to people on the ground. And you cannot talk to people like in Tokyo, where it's just everyone's overwhelmed. So you have to go to the regions where there's still some capacity to even talk to, you know, people working on these kind of applications. Yeah, and then kudos to all the great community. I'm just here, you know, speaking on behalf of everyone, and, you know, this app would not be here without these people. And yeah, that's what we're working on in Japan.
Thank you so much. And actually now when you said that, of course, it's not only about talking to the decision makers, talking to all the professionals and all over, not only in the capital city, that of course it's like, this is the new situation for all of us, new tools to be used, and there is also a lot of discussion in the health community about the health literacy and how actually, like, and digital health literacy on top of that many people never actually. I mean, we were struggling with this even before COVID, and now we have to actually make the, you know, very, very quick adjustment to something that is totally unknown by many. Thank you, Kristina, for this presentation. I know that, of course, it's already 4 p.m. TED. We had this half an hour delay, so I will still, if you allow me to give Kristina a chance to answer one question. If someone would like to ask from the call, you can raise your hand, or you can put your question in the chat. No one?
I can jump in with a question, Kristina. I stole someone else's thunder. Just a question in regards to what you would regard the context-specific efficacy of the system you've created, as in for the Japanese culture in particular, how they view, say, the actions of the government. did they look at this favorably, and was it generally accepted, or has it been accepted publicly as something that was a partnership between the people and the government, or was there any friction in that relationship?
The ZAP is not released yet. There are just a handful of people who are using a beta version, and that's something that we're trying to be very, very careful about. And Japanese culture is very much influenced by the media, and media tends to portray without really understanding deeply. So the civic tech groups working on this app actually contributed to the launch of a COVID tech team within the Japanese government. So before, the government didn't even have a tech team, and when the meeting, that tech team had a kickoff meeting, we had media writings that the government is thinking of building an app that collects a geolocation, and we were all like, we never even mentioned collecting geolocation. That's not in the plan. So just, I think, controlling the information that goes out would be critical to the adoption.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And before this question, there was someone also jumping in. Is there still a wish to comment, or can we move to? Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. I think we have to mute someone there. Right. Thank you, Kristina, for joining us and for sharing your experience. Yes, thank you so much. And now, if we can move to Signe van Zundert, joining us from Copenhagen and representing Nordic Council of Ministers. If you can, Signe, are you with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, Kristina, if you can stop sharing your screen, and then Signe can jump in. Well, Signe is joining us because the Nordic Council of Ministers has released the NordicBaltic.Tech platform, and that's the platform collecting different initiatives not on COVID-19. And of course, Signe is working every day basically with the decision makers, well, regionally, but I believe that also this experience can be generalized for the other for the work in the other countries. So Signe, if you can tell us about the work being done on NordicBaltic.Tech platform, how this actually help us to fight the virus, and how this also help to reach out to the decision makers.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction, Carolina, and thank you all for staying here. And I'm very happy to be here and to be able to talk about this new platform. I will just stop the sharing for a bit and then come back to it, because I have some notes that I have to look at while talking. I'm Signe van Zundert, and I'm a project officer working at the Nordic Council of Ministers in the Secretariat here in Copenhagen. And I'm responsible for the digital development agenda and digitalization in the Nordic and Baltic countries. So I would like to talk about this new Nordic Baltic platform that we just launched this week on Monday, actually. And I will talk a bit about the background for this platform, and then come back to the purpose and the call to action.
Mm-hmm. So now, Signe, I shared my screen with the platform.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, great. So you can see the platform there in the background. Yeah. So the rapid spread of the COVID-19 have brought along huge societal and economic consequences for our societies in the Nordic countries, but also, as we all know, globally. And we see that the governments have taken the situation very seriously and are launching different initiatives to help out companies and ensure safety and health among citizens. However, we also believe that governments alone cannot solve this crisis, and it's important to engage local and regional communities, which has also been stressed, I think, in the previous talks, in solving the consequences of the situation that we're in. Another thing that we've noticed prior to launching this platform is that we've seen a lot of action in the civil society, in startup communities, in public institutions, and in different sectors, such as the health sectors and education, who are coming up with and contributing with new and innovative ways and solutions to align with the new situation that we're in. So for us, it's of course important because a large amount of these solutions are based on digital technologies they have the purpose of supporting our new work and everyday life on a distance. For instance, we see that companies offer services and products digitally. We see that the educational systems are providing online courses and training by using digital learning platforms and tools. And we also see a lot of new tools, apps, etc., that are being developed in the health sector to meet the new needs of performing healthcare on a distance. So our goal in the Nordic Council of Ministers is to support the already strong and existing startup and tech company ecosystems in the Nordic and Baltic countries. So we launched this platform, the NordicBaltic.Tech, this week. And on the platform, we are collecting and sharing the range of innovative initiatives and solutions from across the Nordic and Baltic region that are aimed at solving the challenges in relation to the COVID-19. So we really saw that there was a need to share information, and we want to share this knowledge, but we also want to inspire each other and promote the solutions that are already being launched from authorities, from companies, and other organizations across the Nordic and Baltic countries. So if we look at the webpage or the platform here, you can see that there are 3 entries. So it's for startups, it's for the public officials, or if you have some other kind of initiatives. And if you scroll further down, you will see some articles about different initiatives in the Nordic or Baltic region. And if you go a bit further down, then you can see the database with the initiatives. And I think, we have around 80 registered initiatives right now. And then, of course, we go a bit further down again, then you can also see that we're trying to look into the sectors of education and healthcare, social care, employment and work, finance and welfare, and support for startups. And we have a map showing the different initiatives. So it's a very, hopefully very simple and understandable setup that is aimed at providing information and knowledge sharing about, could be hackathons, it could be different tools, or anything that is actually helping to learn, or some other kind of solutions on a distance, which is the new circumstances that we're in. So my hope is that you would help us share the knowledge about the platform. For the time being, it's aimed at the Nordic and Baltic region, and we just launched it this week. And of course, we are considering also mapping more global or international initiatives. But working in the Nordic Council of Ministers, we have a strong regional focus, which is the Nordic countries, and then also the Baltic countries. So for the time being, it's for this region. Yeah, I think that was a very brief introduction. We of course also, I think another important point that I want to stress is that we have the public officials, we have the startups, and we're hoping that we can somehow also spread knowledge across sectors, in society to engage people in developing, finding solutions. Yeah.
And yeah, so I actually clicked for this if you're a public official. So I understand that this is of course promoted to the public officials from all over the region. And do you have any feedback? Is this something that they need, they are using in order to plan for our policies, or now of course how to actually ease the restrictions?
Yeah, we see that there has been a huge interest from from the public officials that we are working with, and I think it's a very a valuable tool to get, and they're interested in this overview of solutions in the region. So in that way, it's a very valuable tool. Of course, we're also considering what could be the long-term perspective of this initiative, but for the time being, we are collecting the data, so to say, information and knowledge, and looking forward to see how it will develop.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, and of course for everyone who would like to share their initiative. Well, at this moment, as Signe said, this is still limited in the geographical scope to the Nordic and Baltic countries. But if you know, then please share. And of course, you can also share this with your decision makers or policy officials who are looking for different solutions and initiatives, no matter where in the world it is. And now, well, I would like to maybe, if there are any questions to Signe, I will have to stop sharing my screen to actually be able to better see. Is there someone who would like to ask a question? Okay, Temo.
Thanks, Signe, for joining us, and great that you're doing this compilation effort. A number of questions, actually. I mean, I'm curious how through this, like, what all do you think can be achieved through this? Can there be avoidance of the duplication of efforts, and do, for example, very focused initiatives like, say, the contact tracing development and such, who kind of don't want to be disturbed? Do they actually want to be on the list? In short, how do you make this into a kind of a effective cross collaboration tool?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Simo. I think we're in the Nordic cooperation. We're very occupied with sharing the knowledge and the best practices. Of course, I can see that in a way it could interfere with people who are in the midst of solving a crisis. But on the other hand, I think it's also very valuable to learn about, in this rapid development. I think it's important to learn about each other's best practices. If you have solutions that are working, I think there's a need for sharing.
I agree 100%. And basically, just asking that, how do you then take a great example from Iceland and roll it out in Norway, for example? Is that something you do facilitate that to make that happen?
Yeah, if I think that's one of our primary tasks, is to facilitate the knowledge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. I'm wondering if there is if someone would like to have a comment on something else than the or maybe in general about today. Okay,
maybe Signe, one more question.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So despite the disturbances, okay, we have less than 20 here now, but all in all, for example, the Corona data community, over 200 people, a great global community in the MyData community, 2,000 plus people. What's your ask? What can we do for you?
I think for the time being, it's really just about sharing this platform. We want to really reach out to the communities and have you help us build the database with the good solutions or initiatives or opportunities to solve common challenges.
Perfect. So consider it done. Happy to also spread the word and help you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I know it's late or very late in some parts of the world, or very early someone else. I wonder if someone would like to now have a comment or ask their question. I don't see. Okay, there is something happening on the chat. Okay, there is more question to Temu about the sharing the contact person. All right, so let me start closing this call. So now Signe shared with us NordicBaltic.Tech platform for sharing the different initiatives. We are still collecting also the different apps that are dealing with COVID, and if you would like to share with us an app you can do it by this link. There is a form that will put the app directly to our Trello. And of course, we are also happy to hear your story or the story about the story, and share with us something that someone around the world is doing in relation to the data-based initiatives that are ethical and human-centric. As you know, we are in social media and LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and our hashtag for the MyData versus COVID is MyData for COVID-19. So if you are posting something, please use this hashtag. And of course, some of you might be new to MyData, and you can still wonder what is it all about. We welcome you to check our resources on MyData.org website, especially our declaration that describes the 3 shifts that we are advocating for. And for communication platform, the best communication platform for daily exchange of ideas and inspiration is Slack, and you can join it MyData.org/Slack. And of course, you can join us, our organization. We are the association that has the organizational and individual members. So each of you can become a member even today. And yes, on Slack is the Corona Data channel that we are using. And well, the next call will be after the weekend. In some countries, it will be the Easter weekend or a long weekend. But yeah, we continue on next Wednesday, 15th of April with this. And we decided already before this call that today's call that the next week call will be focused especially on the contact tracing, and not only on the apps, but also on the whole discussion around contact tracing, what this actually means for the developers, for the politicians, and for all of us that will probably use one or the other contact tracing app in the close future. And as our Finnish Minister of Transport and Communication said, at least 60% of the people need to use this app in order for it to be useful, to be effective, which means a lot, and which means they have to be good and trustful. So thank you very much for being with us today. And yes, I wish you a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the week. And I hope to see you next week. So please share the information about this call with your networks. Of course, we know that we will not use the open Zoom anymore. We need to do a bit of bureaucracy, a bit of admin work.